Ikran partheni asas totokosu, kechiras tu Simeon, ebloisas tos eprepe.
Our passage for this coming Sunday is Matthew 9:27-35, where we read, "At that time, as Jesus passed by, 2 blind men followed him, crying aloud, 'Have mercy on us, Son of David.' When he entered the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, 'Do you believe that I am able to do this?' And they said to him, 'Yes, Lord.' Then he touched their eyes, saying, 'According to your faith be it be done to you.' And their eyes were opened, and Jesus sternly charged them, 'See that no one knows it.' But they went away and spread his fame throughout all that district. As they were going away, behold, a dumb demoniac was brought to him. And when the demon had been cast out, the dumb man spoke, and the crowds marveled, saying, 'Never was anything like this seen in Israel.' But the Pharisees said, 'He casts out demons by the prince of demons.' And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every infirmity among the people." I'd like to start with Jesus' admonition after he heals the blind men. See that no one knows it. He tells them not to tell anyone. See that no one knows it. But of course they went away and spread his fame throughout all that district. The New Testament interpreter Dale Allison says on this verse, "The blind men who have healed Jesus as David's son and who have had their request granted now openly disobey Jesus. Instead of keeping quiet, they spread the word of Jesus' act. Their disobedience, like the frequent failure of the 12, shows that first-hand observation or experience of the supernatural scarcely guarantees faithful discipleship. Miracles of themselves eliminate neither little faith nor unbelief. Just experiencing something profound or just seeing something profound does not guarantee faithful discipleship. Think of your own lives, or think of our own lives. When something profoundly spiritual happens, when Christ has done something for us, instead of faithfully living in that light, we want to go and tell everyone, as though it's something that makes us special. Or when we ourselves do something especially faithful, we don't just use that as an opportunity to grow closer to God. We want to use it as an opportunity to increase our own significance. And we go and we tell everyone. How often do we privately and quietly do acts of charity? How often do we tell people about what we do? If God works in our lives, we need to be faithful disciples. Otherwise, we have been healed. We have been given the ability to see, and we have immediately returned to spiritual blindness. We all love to tell people what we do. And this is a problem from the earliest days of Christianity, not just as we see here in this event from the life of Christ, but when St. Paul writes to the Corinthians, he writes to a community that is very proud of its spiritual experiences and of its spiritual accomplishments. And so they're constantly bragging and competing with one another. And St. Paul says to them, "What do you have that you did not receive? And if you received it, why do you boast as if you did not receive?" In other words, he's saying to them, you were placed on third base by nothing of your own doing, and you act like you hit a triple, right? But if we boast when we have spiritual experiences, it's only because we boast when we have earthly experiences. We boast about our clothes, our cars, our schools, our pretty or handsome faces, whatever. These things give us an opportunity to elevate ourselves above other people. This is spiritual blindness. This is tying ourselves so much to the earth that we're blinded by those things. And when we treat spiritual matters the same way, far from being expressions of our spiritual sight, they simply become one more opportunity to indicate our spiritual blindness. The importance of silence and the value of silence is seen in 2 events from the life of Christ, where silence is shown to be a great virtue. After the Annunciation in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 2, when the archangel visits Mary, we read about the summary of these events. Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. She kept all these things. She pondered them in her heart. She's giving us an example here of what it means to have an internal spiritual life, of not just constantly broadcasting things that happen to us, but of pondering them in our hearts, of reflecting not on how they can be opportunities to elevate ourselves or to advertise ourselves, but about how they can help us draw closer to God and be better bearers of His message and be faithful to His will. When these things that are spiritual happen to us, and when we do something good or noble in our lives in Christ, ponder it in our hearts. That's what we need to do. But there's another issue where silence is called for, not only when something good happens to us, but when something bad happens to someone else. We hear not only of people's public calamities, but of embarrassing private things. Why tell them? Why share them? Because we want to elevate ourselves above others again, this time not by promoting ourselves, but by denigrating someone else. But look at how the noble Joseph behaves after the Annunciation. I'm sorry, before the Annunciation, to him, before he's told that Mary will give birth a child that is from the Holy Spirit, he only sees that she's going to have a child, and he and Mary have not yet come together, so he fears that there is something bad going on. And it says, her husband Joseph, being a just man and unwilling to put her to shame, resolved to divorce her quietly. He doesn't want to shame her. Of course, nothing bad did happen, but he thinks something did, but he doesn't want to shame her. He doesn't announce the situation. He resolves to handle it quietly. When we hear about the bad things that go on in other people's lives, we have to be like a tomb with this information. Let it die in us and not spread it. So let us be silent and be faithful to God when good things happen to us and when profound spiritual things take place in our lives. And let us also be faithful to God when we hear about less positive things happening in the lives of other people. In this way, we indicate that we are people who are healed by God and who can see clearly what the right thing to do is in any given situation. Let's return then to the beginning of the passage when the two blind men meet Jesus and they say to him, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." Jesus is called the Son of David in the early Christian tradition as a way of saying that he's the Messiah. The Messiah was supposed to come from the genealogical line of David, and we see in the genealogy that opens the Gospel of Matthew that Jesus is from the genealogy of David, because Joseph is from the line of David. The genealogy begins by saying, this is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then it ends by saying, Joseph is connected to this line, and Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, who is called the Messiah. So Jesus is linked to the line of David. This means that he is the Messiah. Messiah, of course, like the Greek word Christos, means the anointed one, and the king of Israel is anointed. So if Jesus is in the line of David, the anointed king, then he himself must be the anointed one who is to come. What's interesting, though, is that Jesus' title, Son of David, is often linked with healing miracles. And when it is, this name, Son of David, seems to mean something more specific, because in the Old Testament, David had an actual son, a birth son, King Solomon, and both he and David are known to be exorcists and healers in Jewish tradition. In 1 Samuel 16, when King Saul is afflicted, we read, whenever the Spirit from God came on Saul, David would take up his lyre and play. And then relief would come to Saul. He would feel better. So David is able to calm the spirits that trouble Saul. A text written after the Old Testament called the Testament of Solomon testifies to the idea that Solomon had power over evil spirits, because the title is The Testament of Solomon, son of David, who was king in Jerusalem, who mastered and controlled all spirits of the air, on the earth, and under the earth. So David and Solomon are both known as healers who can control the spirits that afflict people. Solomon is the son of David, and Jesus is like him when he heals. He is specifically called Son of David because he is the Messiah. but also because he is a healer. He's regularly, when he heals, called Son of David. In chapter 12 of Matthew, after he heals the blind and dumb demoniac, the people were amazed and said, "Can this be the Son of David?" The Canaanite woman in Matthew 15 says to him, "O Lord, Son of David, my daughter is severely possessed." Later in chapter 20, two blind men sitting by the roadside heard that Jesus was passing by and cried out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." And very often when Jesus does heal, he heals blind people. And St. Gregory Palamas begins his homily on this passage by recognizing that Jesus healed an enormous number of blind people. So many that only the God who knows the numbers of the hairs of our head knows how many he healed. He even says at one point, St. Gregory Palamas, that Jesus healed so many blind people during his ministry that there must not have been any left in Judea and Jerusalem after he was resurrected and ascended. In Matthew 15, for instance, two blind men are by the roadside, and they say, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." On Palm Sunday, when Jesus triumphantly enters Jerusalem, it says, "The blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them." In Mark 8, he comes to Bethsaida, and they brought to him a blind man. In Luke 18 and Mark 10, he drew near to Jericho, and a blind man was by the roadside. There's also the famous man born blind in John 9, as well as the blind men in today's gospel. And all of this healing of blind people fulfills the prophecy of Isaiah, which says in Isaiah 61 in the Septuagint, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach deliverance to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind." Now again, St. Gregory Palamas recognizes that this quotation of Isaiah doesn't say that he gives recovery of sight to the blind, but that he preaches it. By saying that he preaches recovery of the sight, we seem to be leaving behind the gift of physical sight and realize that Christ is preaching in order to give them spiritual sight. He always tells us in the choice between physical and spiritual things, as in John 6, do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures for eternal life. Earthly blessings will follow, as when he says in Luke 12, "Do not keep seeking what you are to eat and what you are to drink, and do not keep worrying, for it is the nations that seek these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well." So earthly sustenance will be provided, but our focus needs to be on spiritual things. And it's the same with the healing of the blind. Christ heals people who are physically blind, but he comes primarily to bring spiritual to sight to those who are spiritually blind. And like the blind who are physically blind, when Christ comes into our lives, sometimes there's a process we have to go through. He tells some of them, "Go wash in the pool." Or sometimes they've had to wait many years for him to come. But sometimes people are healed instantly, just as sometimes people are made disciples instantly. Look at Matthew 9, where he heals Matthew the tax collector's faithlessness. We read, "As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he got up and followed him." Sometimes people are healed from their illnesses quickly, and sometimes they have to wait many years. Some of us become disciples very, very quickly. And for some of us, it's a longer, slower process. But all of us are being healed by Christ. Let's turn to him ever more vigorously so that our faith can encourage the healing of our spiritual blindness even faster. We spoke earlier of Jesus' command to the healed men to tell no one. But why does he tell them this? Why does he say, "Tell no one"? What's the secret? There are a few different explanations possible. One is that his identity should not be revealed until it is fully revealed on the cross. His messianic mission cannot be understood apart from the cross. The disciples don't understand this. This is why they don't want him to go to the cross. And Matthew explicitly says that the Pharisees want to destroy Jesus, right? Aware of the plot against him, Jesus withdraws and he continues his healing. And Matthew goes and claims that Jesus' conscious decision to fulfill his ministry by avoiding untimely conflict was a fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy. Behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved. He will not quarrel or cry aloud. The point is that Jesus does not provoke a struggle until the full revelation on the cross. Until then, he heals. Another possibility, promoted by several important commentators, is that Jesus is respecting the law. He's come to people who will no longer be ruled by the ritual purity laws in the temple. But during his ministry, he does conform to temple purity. In Mark 1, he tells the leper, see that you say nothing to anyone, but show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded. Because the priest in the temple is the one who is to acknowledge that someone is healed. In Leviticus 13 and 14, it's the priest who looks at a sore or some sort of imperfection on a person's body and declares them clean or unclean. And then if the disease goes away in Leviticus 14, it's the priest who determines that the person is clean or not. All right? And so perhaps Christ is even as he is here to supersede and transcend the law during his ministry, is trying to respect the law. That's also possible. This is a very difficult question in the history of biblical interpretation. Notice, though, that the Pharisees announce he casts out demons by the prince of demons. And they don't say this to Jesus, they say it to the crowd. They're competing with the crowd for Jesus' attention. They don't deny what he did. They just deny the reason that he did it. He doesn't do it, in other words, because he is a messenger of God and is himself God. He does it because he is possessed by demons. The question is not what he did, but what it means. This, by the way, is why we insist on the Orthodox tradition. Our goal is to lead people to the true God, to the true understanding of Christ. There are lots of people who give lots of reasons for what he did, but we believe that the holy tradition that is passed down to us ensures that we understand properly who Christ is. There are other people who may be partly right. There are other people who may live partly right. We're not condemning anyone. We are simply extolling and exalting the Orthodox faith, because even during his own ministry, many people had many ideas about why Christ did what he did. They all believed that he did it. They just simply interpreted it differently. We want to make sure to have the proper and the correct interpretation. But as for these Pharisees, our passage ends with Jesus showing what leadership of his people means: compassion and love for them. It says, Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every infirmity among the people. Having traveled through the cities and villages, Jesus knows the conditions of the multitudes. They're lost. His response to this sad fact is not anger or resignation. It's compassion and action. He sees the people as sheep without a shepherd. They are people whose own leaders are not leading them to God, but are claiming that the work of God comes from the devil. They are victims, they are harassed, and they are cast down. And in accord with his messianic mission, he seeks to help. Let us go forth as true followers of God and do the same. And let us bring healing to the world, as the Son of David brings healing to the world. And let us make sure that the audience of all our behavior is not the people around us to whom we brag, but the only audience for everything we do is the one true God.
Grande